So good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Quinn and my pronouns are she, her. I'm the membership and outreach manager at Bike Pittsburgh, and I also lead the Women Non-Binary program. Thank you for joining us today for our spring tune-up workshop. We are so excited to have Katie Blackburn here from Freeride instructing today. And yeah, I think just a couple housekeeping items, I'll call them. We will you'll be able to ask questions all throughout the event. You can either use the chat feature you see on the bottom sidebar, or you can say pause at any point and then we can pause Katie and what she's doing and you can get your questions answered. We will also have time for a Q&A at the end. But either way, please, if you have something on your mind, don't hesitate to unmute yourself and make yourself heard. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to Katie.
Thank you, Sarah. Like Sarah said, my name is Katie Blackburn. I'm the volunteer president over at Freeride. I am in no way an expert. I am sharing what I've learned over the last couple of years. Last year, right before the pandemic happened, I got an opportunity to do a workshop with the United Bicycle Institute. So I'm trying to share as much as I can, but I am in no way an expert. And so I just want to blanket that right now. I will try to answer any questions. Like Sarah said, just in the middle of me speaking, if I'm, being too fast or kind of going down a rabbit hole, just be like, pause, or write in the chat, pause, and Sarah will say something. I use she or they pronouns. I've been in Pittsburgh for about 10 years. And I started bicycling just as my main form of transportation as a student. It was easy to get around. And I got into an accident / a car hit me. And then I was like, oh no, I need to learn about bicycle mechanics because now I don't have a bike. So I built one up over at a co-op. And at the time it was called the Alley Cat. Long story short, that's why I'm at Freeride now. So what I'm gonna be mostly working on today is my bike, which is a Cannondale. It's a road bike, the SAD 8, which I think it was in 2008. But if we have time real quick, whoever wants to share out, maybe we can just do like names real quick. And if you have a bike that you're working on, you can just either, if you have it near you, share it, or if you just want to say what bike it is. I'll just do like popcorn style. So I'll pass it to, I see Diane looks like pictures next to mine. So I'll pass it and then you can pass it to somebody else. And I believe you're on mute right now.
How's that? I have a Specialized hybrid and I don't remember this style of it, but it's awesome. So I love it. And I will pass it to Claude. Is that Claude?
Hi, I'm Claude, and I have a Rivendell Betty Foy. I'm going to pass it on to Kat.
I'm guessing we're just saying what our bike is. I had it on mute for a second. I have a Trek, but I actually don't know what kind it is. It's a hybrid, and I'm working on a Schwinn that I actually got from Freeride. Popcorn to Sarah. I'm just going by whoever has a picture up.
Which one? you go, Sarah.
Oh, I mean, you could pick.
Sarah C.
I put a C because I noticed there was another Sarah. I'm Sarah. I use they, them pronouns, and I have a Kona Rove, and it's like a gravel bike that I'm working on. Thanks. I'll call on Molly.
Hi, my name's Molly. I have she, her pronouns, and I just bought a vintage Lotus or Excel for $80 on Craigslist. So this is well timed because I just rode it around. It goes pretty well, but could use some love. I will call on Ellie.
Hi, I'm Ellie. Just got a sweet tandem. It's like a Cannondale RT 1000 on Craigslist. So trying to get it road ready. Yeah, I'm super excited for this. Who has not gone yet? Kim?
That's wrong. That's wrong with my, something's wrong with my iPad, but that's not my name.
What is your name?
Francisco.
Francisco, thank you. Nice to see you.
I don't even know what kind of bike I have, because
What color is it?
All right, I'm off the phone. What do you have with?
I want to switch my name into like this paper ketchup, and I don't want to ask.
All right. Thank you, Francisca and Kim. I'll pass it on to Mary just for time, unless Kim, you want to unmute and say hi.
Mary, hi. I'm still using my old bike, but it's pretty old and it has bald tires and there's a lot of things. It's working, but I got a new bike from Bikes Direct. It's still in the box. It's 90% together, they say, but I have a video or there's a video online that says how to do the rest of it, but I haven't tried it yet. And it's a hybrid. So I just thought this would help. Thank you. Oh, is there somebody else for me to pass it on to?
Looks like Christine, Bridget, Arlene, Melissa, Brenda.
Christine.
Oh, hi. My name's Chris, and I have not been on a bike in 8 years, but I do have a bike I used to ride regularly, and that is it's a Marin Larkspur. It's a hybrid. I did mostly trail riding, that kind of thing. So I have that, and then I also have an older one that I was considering fixing up just to have as a loaner around here. So that's it. I have Marins. Thanks.
Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I can. Hey, this is Brenda, and I have a Santa Cruz Juliana mountain bike, but today we've got my son's Trek Marlin mountain bike on the rack here, so thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I know some folks are still joining the waiting room.
Right.
It's also helpful to really kind of hear where we're all coming from. So I have a mountain bike behind me too. So if there's anything specific that is not necessarily the components on this bike, we can cover the questions that you might have or things that come up. And Sarah's going to put in the chat 2 links. One link is for, thank you, to follow along. There's a guide of sorts. I know I'm a written person, so feel free to open that link and either if you want to take notes or if not, you have it for later and afterwards. The second link is for prizes because I love prizes. So feel free, again, click on it so you have it. You don't need to fill it out right now, but after today, there'll be some, well, today, there'll be some opportunities to earn and win some things, and but want to make sure that it's matched with whatever bike you have or your needs and interest in sizes and colors, and at the end there'll be feedback too. So click on it so you have it up on your browser. Do not need to do anything right now. But let's jump in. So the first thing I just wanted to briefly cover is cleaning. We could spend hours talking about cleaning, and I did this actually yesterday with a clean cloth, over everything, right? Part of the frame, anything that's going to be exposed to outside. If you're like me, after a ride, I'm like, I'm tired, I'm going to eat. So I put my bike down and I let everything dry. So there's sand, there's grit, there's dirt. And so a clean cloth to just like light pressure. We don't want to push anything into any of the components. Separately, I'll talk about the chain and what have you. But clean cloth first over the frame, most of the components. I personally don't like getting my handlebars or seat wet. And then I can either do like a cleaner, like Simple Green, or fun fact, dish soap works great. Dawn dish soap, warm water. As you can see, I cleaned this and then I went for a ride, so it's not the most clean anymore. But what it'll do is reduce that buildup. The more buildup, the more friction, the more resistance. So for the frame itself and the like metal components, when I talk about the chain, I also start with a clean cloth just to remove the most buildup. Starting with the chain, putting a clean cloth right at the bottom and then running it through with going my gears. Nope. Moving my pedals to turn. I dry crankshaft. And then after that, once I've cleaned the chain itself, I try to get into each of the pieces, the cogs in each of my derailleur right set. Yesterday, when I was doing this, I will show you the full snakes of dirt were falling off. So clean cloth first, and then you can actually take a toothbrush to get in between each of your chain rings. I'm not nervous, it's fine. After just taking a clean cloth, you can actually use a solvent, you can use a 2-in-1. So I just have a 2-in-1. It's a cleaner and lube for the chain and gears. So when I say lube, that allows, right, so these are moving pieces and as you are going to be riding, each piece that's creating friction with the lube will keep that friction deterred and will also protect. So I definitely recommend cleaning with a solvent or 2-in-1. It cleans and lubes. This one is a wet finish. So for Pittsburgh, it rains, I ride in the rain. There's also a red version of this same brand that's dry. That's for riding when you know you're going to be riding only in dry weather. And what that does is if it kicks up sand, dirt, gravel, it doesn't have it stick to the chain, but actually encourages that to fall off the chain. If it sticks and gets caught up, it's just adding that friction. And so what I was doing yesterday is I just put a little bit on the bottom chain itself. And again, I run through, make sure that it captures the whole chain. I might put a little bit extra, just make sure that I get into each of the cogs, make sure that it's in each, and so the whole thing is lubricated. Say that very fast. Any questions?
I have a question. Can you talk? So I have the exact opposite lube that you're talking about. I was told, this is other information that I got, but that this was a good one in particular. For even though it says it's for dry, that there's even a little rain emoji on it, that it's okay for that. And the reason I went with this is sort of what you're, I think, talking about with so there isn't a bunch of grimy buildup and dirt on the chain, it falls off easier. Can you speak more about the preference between lubes?
Yes, so a lot of it will be personal preference. This one has a little bit of a snowflake, pouring rain. It even has sun. So this one is more designed, if you're going to be riding in the rain for a period of time, all day, especially if you're touring. The one that you're speaking of that's dry is made more for dry settings, but it can handle if you're out and it happens to start raining, for example, is my understanding. Again, I'm not the maker, so I don't have But that's my understanding. So, but as a lot of the specifics of bike preference, I think it really just makes sense for how you ride, how often, what sorts of environments. Like if you're gonna mostly be riding when it's not raining or spending hours in the rain, the one that you have should be fine.
Thanks.
Good question though. Thank you. I used to get really confused between lube and grease. So I'm just gonna quickly say like grease, and I try to think about this today. Grease will be for the ball bearings that are inside. So when I say inside, we can't actually get to them without taking the bike apart. So inside my wheel, which makes my wheel spin, in the hub, there'll be bearings. That gets grease, but I'm not gonna take that apart right now. Let's say inside my fork, to make my fork, turn, that gets grease. So I don't know if that's confusing to anyone else, but that used to be confusing to me. I was like, lube, grease, they're the same thing. They're not. If anyone has a disc brake bike, so when I say disc brakes, I'm talking about a bike that has in the center, there's a rotor, and then the pads actually squeeze. When you're cleaning that, you really shouldn't need to necessarily, unless obviously if you're going mountain biking and you're spewing up mud and what have you, want a clean cloth microfiber if you can, because that rotor gets easily contaminated. We don't want any sort of solvent. We don't want any sort of cleaner. At that bike school I was talking about last year, they actually just recommended like a tiny bit of rubbing alcohol because it mostly will evaporate. So like don't even touch the rotor with your hands if possible because of the oils on our skin, and it can build up in the rotor, which reduces stopping power, etc. So just quick disclaimer about that. All right. Any other cleaning techniques you may use? I definitely encourage you to put in the chat so other folks on this call can see and hear and learn from the knowledge that's here. So I will move on to, okay. When I first start getting my bike kind of out of the corner and ready to ride, especially in the winter, I might notice that the front tire, well, both tires are losing air, might be flat. That's normal because I haven't ridden it in 6 months, what have you, especially changes in pressure and temperature of my house. So what I definitely recommend to start with is pumping up the air in the tires and seeing if it'll last by the next day. And what I mean by that is, so if I pump up to my pressure and then the next day it's, less pressure again, if it's flat or squishy, then I know it's probably a flat and not just the changes in temperature and pressure. Something that, just a quick check, is spoke tension. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab the two kind of spokes around and just squeeze, so push them together. And what I'm looking for is consistency. What I wanna feel is that this bike has the same amount of pressure around all of the areas of the wheel. If I squeeze and one like really bends in and it's maybe loose, that could be a potential issue because that means the rest of the bike wheel is maybe more pressure. The ones right to the right and left of the one that's loose, there's more tension, they could snap. If you have a spoke wrench to fix that, you can. I don't have a tensioner actually, so this is one of the quick checks, and hopefully it's all consistent. If you're noticing a lot are not consistent, or if the wheel itself is out of true. And what I mean by that is, let me see if I can show you this with my camera. If I spin, well, I'll just show you what I do. As I spin my wheel, what I'm looking for is that the wheel is the same like straightness as I spin it. Okay. And if I'm noticing it wobbling to one side or the other, that also could mean my spoke tension is out. Could mean it's pulling to one side, pulling to the other. Again, if you have a spoke wrench, what you can do is spin your wheel so you can see where, let's say here, it's pulling to that direction. If it's pulling to that direction, then I have to either tighten the opposite side, or if it's pulling to that direction, loosen the side it's pulling to. I want that same straightness for my entire wheel. This is one of the things that if you're not super comfortable with, don't have a tensioner, or you're noticing like a lot of your spoke wheels are loose, I might recommend taking to a shop, just because that is one of the like danger zone, I guess I could qualify it. For example, if I try to just tighten every single spoke, that can actually create too much tension. It could be dangerous while I'm on the road. So I want to share that it's definitely possible. I'm going to even talk more about truing, but I also want to just disclaimer, it is nuanced. And so I would definitely ask questions and research it before trying to just like jump in. Again, I said that very fast. So I will pause.
We do have one question back on the subject of cleaning your bike. Can it be harmful to use soap specifically for brakes, and like the bike in general? Can it do harm to your bike?
If you're using soap specific to a bike, or any soap in general?
Why don't we talk about both, I guess. I think it was soap in general, but.
So the reason I offered dish soap is because of the way it mimics very similar elements to what we want. We want to remove debris, remove grease. If you're using like hand soap, for example, or body soap, like the different components of the soap itself may not be as beneficial. I don't think if you're using, I'm trying to think of a different kind of soap. If you're using like soap that's designed for like, I'm thinking of those sprays that are like 409 and like bleach, like those may actually, because of the acidic, like how strong they are, and they might actually end up like decomposing depending on the structure. I wouldn't recommend that's, but I'm just gonna blanketly say it probably depends. I would look up the specific soap that you have. I do feel comfortable just saying like if you have Dawn dish soap, I would imagine most dish soaps. It just so happens that in my mechanic circles, Dawn seems to come up a lot. So if you do get soap on the brakes, that's I think part 2 of that question, that is okay. What we don't want is we don't want soap to still be on the brakes, or like a dry layer of soap to be on the brakes when you go to stop, because then you'll slide a little bit. So if you do, just try and either like wipe it off, wash it off. I'm gonna say wash off just like with water and towel. And for the brake pads of if you're talking about a disc brake bike, I might give it a time, 24 hours or something. That's because I don't know that much about this, so I'm being overly cautious. So I will just say like I don't actually know if you get additional chemicals on your disc brakes. Again, what they taught us was to remove it with quick rubbing alcohol, but if that doesn't work, I don't know. That is a Google question.
I would agree with you though, sticking to things like dish soap that are like simple detergents. Kat Greger says she uses Simple Green, like things like that don't have all of those added components, like you were saying, glycerin, like things that soften your hands. You don't want that, on your brakes for sure. Cool. I think we're good with questions for now, unless anyone else has something.
Any other questions? Something else for a spring tune-up, just looking at the tread. So looking at where over the course, I have road bike tires, which is right now don't have a lot of tread, but on bikes there might be there's like little almost like hairs that stick up. They might be grooves that if you wear down, it's time to replace the tire. If you have something like a mountain bike tread, it might be more obvious. I don't know, you probably can't see this, it's a little bit dark. but the tread itself, once it gets smooth, right? So those are types of things that for a spring tune-up, it might be time. I know I've definitely put my bike away at the end of the season, be like, I'll deal with it next year. And then next year I'm like, but I want to ride, and then never gets fixed. Dry rot might happen at the corner if you're leaving your bike in a, maybe it's been a couple years, maybe not just the end of the season, but especially at the sidewalls, it seems to crack and you'll notice little grooves. If there's any sort of dry rot, I don't recommend riding on that tire. I recommend replacing it, just because the integrity, it means like the rubber's dried out, and so it's not going to give you that same grip. It's not going to give you that same steering. It's probably going to fall apart, and you're probably going to have a flat tube is what's going to happen. All right, brakes. So we kind of talked a little bit, but not really. So when I'm talking about brakes, what I'm going to be expecting is that it stops. So that I pull my handlebar and it stops. Great. But what else I'm noticing is how far do I have to pull my lever for it to stop? If my lever is hitting, so my lever right here is hitting my handle, that is not a good sign. That means I have additional stopping power I am no longer using. So that means a couple things. I have to tighten the cable tension so that it stops ahead of time. And or what I actually do know about my bike is that I had completely, I don't know if you'll be able to, can you see that pinch? It goes all the way in, because a new brake pad will be this thick, and my brake pad, the grooves in my brake pad are actually non-existent right in the middle. I have worn through my brake pad. This is a new one. You can see the grooves, they're pretty clear. So because when I am squeezing my brake lever, my brake pads should push on my rim and stop. However, I am using two of flat, so they're going in farther to stop, which is why my lever's closing in on itself. So I know that I need to replace my brake pads. If the brake pads, if the brake pads are not necessarily all the way replaced, but you notice, can you see this? So my lever should go for a road bike. It's personal, again, this is gonna be personal preference. Some people like a short, some people like to feel it. The more room you have to feel it, the kind of like, the difference between my mom's Pontiac van is I have to press on the brakes and it's a slow stop, versus my partner's Prius, which I put on a little bit and it like stops, right? So if that is the case, I'm in the middle zone, you have additional room for your brakes. And as the season, so let's say this season, I'm pressing on my handlebar, it's a middle brake, it's a middle pad, so I have some more room. As I use my brake over the course of the season, I have an opportunity to tighten as I use those brake pads. So let's see that I can show you on my bike. So I'm articulating the brake, it's pinching. The more wear, the closer I'll have to pull my pads together. And I can adjust this by what's called an adjusted barrel adjuster. This might look different on different bikes. Sometimes it's in the handlebar, especially for lever bars, it'll be coming out. But I can move this barrel adjuster, it's a screw and it elongates. Well, it doesn't elongate, but when I untwist it from its sheath, that sounds weird. But when I loosen, I'm only gonna do this a little bit because you can adjust it in like quarter or half turns and it creates a big difference. So I twisted it just a tad bit, and what it will do is it creates more space and creates more cable tension. And so in creating that cable tension, it pulls, and that pulling brings my brake calipers in closer. So that same strategy or same method can be used. So here, nope. So here is a mountain bike brake lever that I have here. And the barrel adjuster is going to be right where the cable comes out. There's two pieces. One is the actual, this is interesting to do with one hand. So I am twisting both pieces at the same time now, but the top or the most inward is the actual barrel adjuster. And then this plastic piece holds it in place. So what I'm doing is I'm loosening my barrel adjuster and then I'm locking it in place. So now there's like a millimeter of space, which creates more tension in my cable, which brings my pads closer together, which for this bike is a center pull. So it's creating more tension, bringing my brake pads closer together.
Hey, Katie, I just wanted to give you a quick time check. We are at 10:34 and we do have a question about brakes.
Okay, cool.
Sarah C said, I have disc brakes for the first time, used to have cantilever. How do you know when to change disc brakes and how? That might be more of like, how do you know when disc brake pads are worn down? Sarah, if you want to clarify which one you're thinking of, please feel free to.
I guess the pads, I really am not familiar with. It's a totally different setup. Like every bike I had previously had cantilevers. So I'm a little at a loss around like, how do I care for my disc brakes now that I have them?
That is a great question. So that school that I was telling you about that I went to last year, we actually got to see, unfortunately, I grabbed this from Freeride and I don't know where I put it, so I don't have it for you, but I tried to get an example. The difference of wear on a brake pad for a disc bike or disc brake bike is going to be probably the difference by like 1.5 millimeters. Like the wear, but you'll be able to tell a couple. So there's two kinds of disc brakes. There's the kind that have a cable and there's a kind that's hydraulic. Hydraulic is a fluid, it creates pressure, kind of like a car. The cable, similarly to the bike brakes for the cantilever you're just talking about, it just puts tension again and pinches in the same way. The difference between, I don't know if I'll be able to show you this on my camera. And I apologize, I'm moving this around. This is my first bike presentation on a virtual medium. Between the two, I don't know if that's helpful. And in order to remove them, depending on the style of disc brakes you have, whether it's cable actuated or hydraulic actuated, will be different. If it's hydraulic, it automatically increases over the course of you using it. It understands every time you squeeze how to move the pads in. If it's cable actuated, you'll have to tighten it, just like we had to tighten our cantilever brakes. Second thing is, as you on the rotor itself, if you start to notice scraping, scratching, this is one from Freeride, so I can see that it's been pretty used. That could be a sign of you're hitting the metal. Sometimes on brake pads for disc brakes, there'll also be a groove. It will depend on the brake pad, the company who makes it, the style. So we can maybe chat a little bit about that at the end too. Yes, is that okay? Okay, cool. So that was a period about brakes. We talked about barrel adjustments, levers, alignment, and adjustment. So when I'm looking at brakes on my rim, as you can imagine, I want them to be as straight and parallel following the rim. If it's actually touching the tire at all, I could wear my tire wall down. If it's crooked, let's say, I could be putting pressure on one half of the brake, but not the other, so it's not giving me my full stopping power. And for these brakes, brake pads, I should say, it's an Allen key. I can loosen this up. I have my handy multi-tool. If you don't have one, I definitely recommend. It has all the Allen keys. The challenge is picking the right size when you need it. So I can loosen up my Allen key and I see it then moves, right? So I can place it exactly where I need it to be. And so typically what that means is I'm gonna pinch, if I had two hands, I would pinch my brakes and then tighten them at the place. And when I say place, I mean the lever indent that I want, as well as placement of the brake pads, and then tighten them back to where they are parallel with the rim. The only caveat is linear pull. And when I say linear pull brakes, it's the kind of brake that connects, and then there's like a little tube, it's called a noodle at the top that holds it together. Sometimes the preference is actually a toe in, which means that the brakes are more forward into the rim than the rear, because linear pull brakes actually have the most stopping power of the cable actuated rim brakes. And so they need a little bit more support, I guess you could say. Okay, adjustment, alignment. If my brake pad itself, so mine was smooth and flat, but if it's only, half of it, or I see that it's on the diagonal, that is some indication that I need to reposition. If it's on the diagonal and I reposition though, then I'm only hitting it at a corner. So depending on how angled that diagonal is, it might be worth replacing. If it's a 1 millimeter, maybe 2, no, maybe not 2. You could probably get away with readjusting if it's like towards the beginning of you noticing, but if it's really cut, I recommend replacing. Other thoughts about brakes? All right. No,
no questions in the chat.
All right, so the chain, drive chain, drive train, including the chain. We talked a little bit about cleaning, but I also want to go over real quick stretching. People say stretching, and what I just want to clarify is the chain itself does not stretch. What happens is the little pins that connect our chain together. So when I'm talking about a chain and I'm talking about the pins, I mean each one of these rollers that make the chain a chain wear. So those wear by being, going into the cogs and going into the chain rings, and over time they wear, which feels like there's a little bit more room, but the chain itself does not stretch. How you can tell is a couple different, you can probably just feel it as you start to learn and play and feel your bike. Oh, it's more than normal. I put in the handout, if I'm in my outwardmost gear, so I messed up. I moved the shifting. thought we could talk about that. So my bike currently doesn't shift, so that we could do it. So what I'm talking about, the pull, I put in the diagram or the guide that you can actually give it a little, put in the outwardmost chain ring and pull. So I have a little bit of wear, but really only one pin is coming off. So I have some more life left. If you have a tool, it's fancy dandy tool, chain checker, you can actually see how much wear. So it's actually good that it does not fit. So because it does not fit, I don't have that much wear yet. As soon as it fits, then I know. And what it's checking for is signs of half-life left. So I have about, I still have a good half-life of my chain left. But what I'm also going to be looking for, especially if I haven't used this bike in a little bit, is any signs of rust, any signs of damage, any signs of like stiffness. So I want all of my all of these chain pins to move. I want them to be able to actually go around. If I'm feeling anything sticking, if I'm hearing anything snap, especially the bikes we get at Free Ride, a lot of them have rusted chains. A rusted chain, I really recommend replacing. If you're in a pinch, there's definitely ways you can remove the rust, still use it. But if you have any sort of rust or damage on a chain, and then you continue to ride with it, you're gonna actually start to damage the cogs in your cassette, you're gonna start to damage the chain rings, and then these are gonna be harder to replace, more time consuming, maybe more expensive. So starting as soon as you notice that the chain needs to be replaced, starting with that to keep the integrity of your chain rings and cogs in place. And when I say wear, and what I mean is wear, you can see the teeth. What I'm looking at is the teeth of my chain rings. I want them to be more or less mountainous. If I'm noticing any cuts at the top, especially in a row, some chain rings will actually have a pattern on them where it's like mountain, 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 flush, mountain, 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 flush. And it's designed that way so that the chain slides in and off easier. So I just want to make sure that we're not confusing the patterns of what's supposed to be a part of the chain ring and the chain rings wear. It's a lot harder to tell with the cogs. Again, it's a lot kind of all together in a row. You might be able to tell, so as someone donates a bike to Free Ride, you can tell what gear they may have favored because those might be more worn. But it's a lot easier to tell on our chain rings themselves, which I still have a lot of life left.
Hey, Katie, what wall mount are you using to hang your bike there?
Good question. This was donated to Free Ride. It's missing some parts. It's supposed to be taller. But I purchased the same one upstairs. It's on Amazon. I usually don't recommend Amazon, but it's a tension mount. So I'm renting. I can't put anything in my walls, so it's tensioned between my ceiling and my floor, and then that way our bikes can hang. Yeah, this one's broken, so that's why it's in my basement.
But it works.
And if you don't have a bike rack or a bike stand or anything, also flipping your bike upside down and working on it it's a little bit weird to like think about it upside down. Another fun thing I learned at that class is if you're ever like not sure which way to turn a bolt because it's like upside down or backwards or like you're on the other side, is like pretend you are the bolt I'm like, which way do you have to turn to loosen? And like, that is my mental game I play to figure out which way I have to go. All right, so real fast. I know we're coming up on time, so I just want a quick shifting. We didn't talk about shifting too much. And I think that's, honestly, for me, it's the hardest part, because there's like math involved sometimes. And I'm like, I don't like math. Actually, I love math. It's still hard for me. So what I'm doing is, anytime I'm shifting, you always want to be moving your gears, because if you shift while it's stationary, you can actually get it stuck. And so I want to make sure that I can move through all of my gears. So can you see? So I'm just gonna pedal, and I'm just gonna run through, make sure it's going through. I don't hear any skipping. Oh, I kind of skipped. Might have been just a fluke of how quickly I was going. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for the front brake, or front as well. So, oh, look at that. It's not moving at all. So what that means for me, I'm trying to move it into the outward chain gear. I'm trying to push my lever, and it's actuating, but it's not clicking. It's not enough. So this cable, I need more tension. And I know that because if I start just pulling on the cable where it's on my bike, so I'm pulling it here, and I start, oh, I just pulled it through. This is moving out because this cable pulling it down, which moves it out. And there's two ways to adjust this. Because of how me pulling this actually pulled the cable through, because of how loose it is, I actually need to undo my bolt here, pull to retension, tighten it back up. However, just normal wear and tear, I can actually, again, use my barrel adjuster. So I follow this back up, and for road bikes, there's a potential barrel adjuster inline, which means it's in the cable housing. There's a better, like, so you're able to twist it in the cable housing. My last road bike, the barrel adjuster was built into right where, actually it was in the down tube, but my last bike, and the barrel adjuster looked the same, but on, and I think I put a picture on that in the guide as well. Same with the rear. So I have a barrel adjuster on my rear derailleur, same thing. If I'm noticing that I need to add more tension, when I say more tension, I mean because you can kind of like see what more tension creates. If I'm pulling on where the cable is, I see my derailleur wants to go in towards my bike. So I can tell, okay, adding cable tension will pull it in. So depending if where it's stuck, my derailleur is misaligned and it's stuck, I'm trying to put it in its most inward gear and it's not going, I need to add more cable tension. If it's maybe not getting into its most outward gear, maybe I have too much cable tension, for example. So I just like that little cheat sheet so you can pull. And again, barrel adjuster is the quick, as if you're on like a tour, if you're on the road, you can, the barrel adjusters are designed so you can quick do that without needing any tools. You can move it with your hands. If it's really off, you can reset using your cable, and then there's different like screws, lower limit, higher limit. I don't think we have the time to get in to that right now. But a quick, if you're looking at your full outermost, innermost gear, outermost, innermost. So lower limit, higher limit, those are with the screws, keep it within keep the range, right? So I don't want it to go into my bike. I don't want it to come off. Those are what those two screws mostly protect. And inside there's a, wow. Inside there's the screws push on. Anyway, doesn't matter. Cool. Let's see. And the last thing I just wanted to bring up real quick is loose bolts. So the last part is I just want to make sure before my bike is going out into the road, it's ready to ride, all my bolts are tightened. I discovered in cleaning my bike that my rear axle was loose, and so my rear wheel could have come off while I was riding. There's different torque specs. So there's actually you can look up each bike, the manufacturer's specs of how tight each bolt should be. And so how tight should my stem, like it, I don't want to over tighten it. Again, hand tight. And when I say hand tight, I mean like I can't tighten it. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to tighten it. Be like, oh, but I really want it to sit. So I'm gonna like force it, because you actually could snap, right? Or make some of the bolts actually, shoot, what is it called when, you know what I'm talking about?
Shear
Where,
it?
what did you say?
Are you looking for shear? Shear the bolt? Break it?
Shear it, yeah, or
Thread?
Strip it?
Strip it.
Yes,
Oh,
the thread.
We'll find it.
Oh, I can't think of that word. Thank you. Okay, I know I went into your question time, so I will stop and then just allow for questions.
We do have one question. How do you get all the bike grease off your hands after working on it?
Gojo is a brand of soap that has, it's almost like, it feels like sand in it. It's gritty. So that's what I have here, and that's what we have at Freeride / Construction Junction. So Gojo, I definitely recommend.
Nice. And if you don't have any of that at home, I've also done coconut oil with sugar mixed in. It's not going to be as effective as those like bike grease specific soaps, but if you have eczema or sensitive skin, I find it works really well for that. You might have like the lingering remnants of it, but it's not gonna totally dry your hands out.
I didn't know that. That's cool. That probably smells better too. Okay, so I kind of went really fast because we only have an hour. I could easily spend hours and hours, and I appreciate all of your patience with being virtual in this space. So thank you. Any other questions that come up, even if it's not now, definitely feel free to email like me. I answer the Freeride email, so it's just info@freeride.org. Sarah, if you could put that in the chat, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I think we have a couple questions coming in. Marcia says, are there any learning programs that Freeride offers where we can come to learn in person and perhaps volunteer?
So right now, we do not have in-person learning workshops, unfortunately. We haven't figured that out with COVID. There are plans for this summer to offer our DIY, and it'll be appointment-based. So if folks are familiar with Freeride, you could drop in before, and our volunteers have a lot of knowledge and would help you fix up your bike or a bike that we have on the wall without doing it for you. So we're gonna do some of that in person, but it's gonna be small. We can't have more than 6 people in at the same time. So that will be starting probably in May. Right now we're working for our first bike sale, which is April 10th and 11th. So we're doing all our calories and getting our bikes ready, fixed up and out the door, so that afterwards, end of April, but probably beginning of May, we'll have the DIY, which is you can come in with your bike or work on a bike in our shop. And we do have volunteering opportunities. I know Kat has already come by. If you just want to share your email, we can put you on that email list. We're just not showing it publicly because, again, for COVID, we're asking folks to sign up ahead of time.
I'm going to jump in and say, as a volunteer, like, you also don't need to know how to do all this stuff because there's usually somebody else there. Like right now, I'm just helping taking bikes like getting bikes like basically just like kind of ready for people. So I'm just checking the like spokes, brake levers, like it stops. So you don't have to have all of those like skills, because I'm learning a lot while I'm working on the bikes as well. So it's definitely increasing my mechanic skills, and I really appreciate that.
And we appreciate you.
We have a couple more questions. Ellie said, quick question about bike frames. Do steel frames need different care than aluminum frames?
Oh, that is a good question. And I do not know the answer to that question. Does anyone on this call know the answer to that question or have?
I wish I did. That's a really good one. Yeah, I would say that's definitely worth looking up. But yeah, I don't know my metals that well, unfortunately.
I sort of guess that cleaning is similar, but you might, with a steel frame, be more wanting to look for little spots where the paint has chipped away and you might get rust or something like that. That's just kind of off the top of my head, but that might be the only difference.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, someone once told me that I should take apart my steel frame bike and put frame saver on the inside. Otherwise it would like be destroyed. And I'd never heard that before. So I was just wondering if that was a thing.
I've never heard that either, but that doesn't mean it's not a thing that some people do. I do know, because I'm actually in the process of acquiring a frame that it's cool. It has couplers on it, so it means you can take it apart. And it has to be powder coated to like hold the integrity, which I didn't know anything about powder coating, which is like when bike manufacturers actually like paint and the powder coat is not just paint, but it's actually this chemical buildup. So I'm wondering, I don't know, but I'm like thinking if the same style of powder coating for steel and aluminum frames is the same, and outwardly you wouldn't have to do anything different. Still don't know about the inside though. You definitely wouldn't want water in any situation. So good question. I'll look that up and if we have an answer, I'll post it on.
I think one more question about frames. Leo said, so simple green is okay to use, just make sure you wash it all off, right?
Yes.
Right.
And simple green, there's two kinds. There's like a diluted kind, or there's the concentrated kind you dilute yourself. So just a caveat to pay attention to which kind you're getting, because you don't need a whole lot. Good questions. I appreciate all of this. I'm learning stuff too. Any other questions, Sarah?
Not coming through the chat. Thank you all for joining us today. I guess, Katie, if you have anything about free ride you want to share. Oh, sorry, one question. What school did you go to, Katie? I think to learn about the bike maintenance specifically.
UBI, United Bicycle Institute.
Is that in Colorado or?
It's in Oregon.
Oregon, okay. Portland specifically, or?
No, it's south in, I always want to say Asheville, but that's not right. Medford.
Medford, okay.
It's like right around Medford. It's actually the southern part of Oregon. There is a school called Barnett's Institute in Colorado that I think most of the REI techs had gone through or trained by.
Very cool. Yeah, I know there's tons of programs out there. And there are some that I think have been offering more and more women and non-binary specific scholarships, really as a way to help encourage diversity in the industry, so that not all bike shops are male dominant, because that is still kind of the norm, unfortunately. We got some great jobs and thank yous. Oh, sorry, coming through the chat. What were you going to say, Katie?
That's how I got to go to that school. I applied for the LGBTQ scholarship. So it was for women, non-binary, queer folk, and that's how I was able to go. And like they covered lodging, they covered the courses. It was hosted by QBP, which is a part company. I don't know, they're probably not doing it for COVID this year, but if anyone's interested ever, and this is in the ether, who sees this in the future, let me know and I can connect or give you a recommendation or whatever you need. So I recommend. It was cool, and I made a community to ask folks. So having those questions. But you said there's a question coming through.
Oh, it was just about what school you went to, but there are lots of thank yous in the chats. Katie, this has been super helpful. So fantastic job. Thank you so much for instructing today and hosting this workshop. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And don't forget, now you have an opportunity to, those links, one is for prizes, because I have a couple to share out, and maybe they're cool and folks will get something. So if you just want to do that in the next, day or so, and then I'll be reaching out, or Sarah, one of us will be reaching out to get stuff to y'all. Thanks. I appreciate, this is super helpful for me. So thank you. I don't have anything else to say, I don't think, but.
We do have one more question. We're hopping around here. Is there an age requirement for volunteers at Free Ride? Would love to bring my 13-year-old. Thank you so much for this workshop.
As long as there's a guardian with a child, you can have the child, but if they're on their own and by themselves, they have to be 18. So if you want to bring your 13-year-old and come with that child, then that's totally fine, assuming the person asking the question is older than 18.
Cool. All right. I put a few things in the chat there. We'd highly encourage you to sign up for Bike Pittsburgh's Women Non-Binary newsletter. Stay in the loop about more virtual workshops. We're hoping to start up group rides probably in the fall, once it's safe to do so again. Yeah, fingers crossed. That's where we're at. And also coffee meetups, because that's something we did pre-COVID. That was really, really great. Wonderful place to meet new people who are also interested in biking. And I also wanted to thank our partners at Venture Outdoors. They helped promote this event today to get more people outdoors and on their bike this season. And they have 2 active 12-week programs coming up. So I include those in the chat as well, in case you're interested. But yeah, thank you again for joining us today. It was lovely to see all of your faces this Saturday, and hope these tips are helpful. Hope you all get out on your bikes soon. So enjoy the rest of your weekend.